Talk about a crusher. Yes! Oh!
Are you kidding me?
And gone!
Welcome back to the Schoolyard Sports Podcast. On this podcast, Lane Frank, we're now on episode 206. So we're 206 episodes through, and this is our bracket episode. We're back with a bang because this is March, and for another year, we're doing it again, the full bracket on the Schoolyard Sports with Lane Frank show. It's gonna be a great episode. It's my favorite episode to do of the year. This and the mock draft episode, the best two up there, but this takes sole reign as the best episode of the year. That's all we're doing in episode 206, filling out this awesome bracket. Then I'll give you my bracket champion. We did it in 2021, the first year. We picked Illinois. Didn't go so great. Illinois lost in the round 32. 2022, I picked Kansas. Whew! They won the national championship. 2023, we picked Texas. They were up 14 in the Elite Eight, ended up losing in the Elite Eight. 2024, we picked Kentucky, and they lost in the round of 64. But this year, I'm determined and I'm ready to get this national championship pick down right and get this perfect bracket. So without further ado, let's get into this perfect bracket episode coming up next. Let's get into this, the perfect bracket episode, and we're starting out with the first four games. Some of these you're not going to care about. Alabama State versus St. Francis U. I don't really care. I like St. Francis. They're 16-17. They're an underdog. All right, let's take St. Francis right here. Texas versus Xavier. I like this game because Texas, obviously led by Ronnie Terry, he's fighting to keep his job. Sean Miller's had a great resurgence at Xavier, but I also don't think Xavier gets this one done. Let's go with Texas over Xavier. American versus Mount St. Mary's. This one doesn't matter. Let's go with American. It's a 16 versus 1 game. Winner plays Duke. I'm going to say Duke's going to win that game. San Diego State, North Carolina. It's a disgusting thing, actually, that North Carolina is in this NCAA tournament. 1-12 in quad one games. Nobody had them in the tournament. Out of the 111 bracket simulations, 111 had West Virginia in there. The NCAA tournament committee, selection committee, didn't have West Virginia in there. A disgrace. The reasoning? Because star forward Tucker DeVries had an injury. Newsflash, Tucker DeVries only played the first 8 games of the year and didn't play a single conference game. It did not affect their season in any way, in my opinion. So, I mean, that was just a disgrace by the committee to put North Carolina into the first 4 games. Disgrace, in my opinion. But they're going to beat San Diego State, North Carolina, over San Diego State. Now, the real games, everybody. The March Madness. Let's get into it. Let the madness begin. Auburn, number 1 overall seed. They've been struggling as of late, but they get the win right here. Auburn, it's my round of 32. Let's pencil that in over there. Louisville versus Creighton. Another big mishap by the committee right here. Louisville is number 10 in the AP poll. Number 10 in the country. That's what they're ranked. Number 10 should get either a 2 seed or a 3 seed. Maybe a 4 if the committee's being really mean. Louisville's an 8 seed in this tournament. Pat Kelsey's being disrespected, but so is Creighton. Creighton's a really good team, too. Ryan Kalkbrenner, they're going to have no answer for him in this game. So I'm going to go with the Creighton Blue Jays, taking down the Cardinals right here. Bird-on-bird action, but Creighton from the Big East gets a win. Creighton made the Big East final. I like this Creighton team. They're experienced. They win in March. Greg McDermott knows how to get to the Sweet 16. They've done it the past 2 years. They're going to get to the round 32 right here. Auburn versus Creighton is going to be our round 32 matchup. Continuing with the round of 64. Michigan versus UC San Diego. The biggest disgrace that the committee did right here was putting Michigan as a 5 seed. Now, Michigan's 25-9. Pretty good record to be in the Big Ten. They won the Big Ten tournament. They have great wins against quad 1 teams. Some other teams in this region that are ranked above Michigan. 3, Iowa State. Same record as Michigan, actually one less win, and without their second best player, Keyshawn Gilbert. They're a 3 seed. Texas A&M, a 4 seed, 22-10. Didn't win their conference tournament, lost in their first game. Looking around this bracket, Arizona, a 4 seed with 12 losses, didn't win their conference tournament. Wisconsin, that's the biggest disgrace. Same record as Michigan, yet Michigan has 2 head-to-head wins over them, including a Big Ten championship win over them, and they're 2 seeds higher as a 3 seed. Enough of that talk, though. Michigan's playing UC San Diego, and UC San Diego is statistically, Ken Palm-wise, the best number 12 seed in college basketball history. For Michigan to have to play them after just winning the Big Ten tournament, I don't know what the committee's thinking. I think Michigan gets the win, but it's going to be tough. When you play on Sunday, when you play 3 games in a row, and you have to travel across the country to Denver and play on a Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, That's going to be tough for Michigan, but I think they get it done. They move on to the round of 32. They're mad. I'm mad. Dusty May, though, friend of the show, did a great job with this team in this tournament, and they're into the round of 32. They had 8 wins last year. They're 25-9 right now, and they just won the Big Ten tournament. From last to first in the Big Ten Conference, that's what Dusty May did for Michigan. They're to my round of 32. It's going to be a great game against UCSD. It's not going to be a blowout, but Michigan gets the job done. Texas A&M versus Yale. This one's a really interesting game for me because Yale is a great sharpshooter, Josh Poulizdakis, but A&M, Wade Taylor, gets to the line more than anybody in the country. They get more offensive rebounds than anybody in the country because they miss a lot of threes. They don't really have centers, but they get a good amount of rebounds. Zerk Phelps gets a good amount of rebounds. Yale, they beat Auburn in the round of 64 last year. Auburn won the SEC tournament. A lot of people are comparing that game to maybe the UC San Diego game, but also this Yale game because it is that Yale team. One thing missing from that Yale team, Danny Wolf from last year, who's on Michigan now. I think Yale is going to put up a great fight against A&M, but at the end of the day, Wade Taylor and Zerk Phelps and Pharrell Payne, too much for the Bulldogs. Texas A&M Aggies get into the round of 32. They'll play Michigan. Ole Miss versus North Carolina, because at North Carolina, winning that first 4 game against San Diego State. Ole Miss is led by Sean Padula, who's a great sharpshooter, wears a headband. He knows what he's doing out there. He got a great 3-pointer to win it over Arkansas at the buzzer. They have a top 10 coach in the country, and Chris Beard might be his last time at Ole Miss if they lose this game, but I don't think they lose this game. I'm going to go with Ole Miss over North Carolina, proving my point. North Carolina did not deserve to be in this field whatsoever. Iowa State versus Lipscomb. I was going back and forth in this game. It's a really interesting game to me. When you look at Lipscomb's schedule, they don't do so great against teams, Power 5 teams. They didn't do so great this year. Iowa State, you look at this team, they're more than just Keyshawn Gilbert. They got Taman Lipsey, Milan Momcilovic, a lot of stars around this team. They made the Sweet 16 last year. TJ Otzelberger is a great recruiter. He's also a great in-game coach. So they're a little bit banged up, and I know that. But I still think Iowa State gets the job done, and they move into the round 32. ISU into the round 32. Marquette versus New Mexico. Great matchup. Marquette, experienced squad that really has underachieved in the NCAA tournament. 2 years ago, they were a 2 seed. They lost in the round of 32. Last year, they were a 2 seed. They ended up losing in the Sweet 16 to North Carolina State, a game they definitely should have won. So they lose Tyler Kolek. They bring a few guys back. They still have David Joplin. They have one of the best scorers in the country, Cam Jones. They have the best defending point guard in the country, and Stevie Mitchell is going to force a bunch of steals in this game, which is unfortunate for New Mexico, whose best player, Donovan Dent, who they're paying $500,000 to beat New Mexico right now, to average 20 points a game for them and not go into the portal. He's going to get shut down by Stevie Mitchell. So I'm going to go Marquette. Shaka Smart makes a smart game right here. They move on to the round of 32 over New Mexico. No 10-7 upset right here, which we do see pretty often. Close out this round of 64 in our first region. Michigan State versus Bryant. No debate here. Let's go with MSU. MSU, a great 2 seed. They could have been a 1 seed, potentially, over Florida or over any other team, maybe even Auburn. If they ended up winning that Big Ten semifinal game against Wisconsin, I think they probably would have beat Michigan. They were already 2-0 against them. Michigan State's been a great squad all year. Only woe for them. They can't shoot the 3 balls well as some other teams in this field. But it rounds out a round of 64 in that first region. Let's keep it going. Let's go region by region in this bracket. Auburn versus Creighton. Janai Broom is obviously one of the best players in the country, and Auburn has lost 3 of their last 4. Auburn, how are they going to react when they have to play a 7'1" center? Well, they're going to attack everybody else on Creighton, and that's what they're going to do right here because not everybody else in Creighton is so good. So let's go with Auburn into the Sweet 16. Auburn, they've been underperforming as of late, and getting these 2 wins is really going to help them out. Michigan versus Texas A&M. Expect a battle, but also expect Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden to ball out in this game. Heavy legs. They're going to be tired. They've played 3 games the past 3 days. They're going to be playing a game on Thursday, a game on Saturday. It's going to be tough for them, but I think they get it done. Dusty May moves into the Sweet 16. He's got more experience in these games than Buzz Williams. He made the Final Four with FAU back in 2023, if you remember that. So let's go with Michigan over Texas A&M into the Sweet 16. Ole Miss versus Iowa State. Going back and forth in this one, I'm going to go with what's a great head coach battle, TJ Otzelberger and Chris Beard. I'm going to say Chris Beard is 1 foot out of the door. He's going to Indiana after this game. So Iowa State, Taman Lipsey. Let's go with them. Let's go with Taman Lipsey. Have a great game. One of my favorite players in the country, Milan Momcilovic, to rain 3s all over Ole Miss. They're playing Wisconsin. It's an easy one for me. They kind of get close to home. Iowa State over Ole Miss. Ole Miss played a lot of games in the past few days. Iowa State beats a team out of the SEC in Ole Miss. Marquette versus Michigan State. Like I said, 2 years ago, Marquette was a 2 seed, and they lost to Michigan State, who was a 7 seed. Roles are flipped now. Cam Jones, he's older. David Joplin, he's older. Jaden Akins is still on this Michigan State team. Everybody else is new. Jace Richardson is one of the best freshmen in the country, if not the best freshman. in the country. Trey Holloman, one of the best players off the bench. Every time I watch Michigan State, Trey Holloman makes an impact. Whether it's a good impact or a bad impact, he's going to shoot the ball well and he's going to get things done because he probably is their best shooter. Cohen Carr, he's a flying car. We didn't think we could have cars by 2025. Cohen Carr is flying in there for Michigan State at 6'5", even though he plays like a big man. It's going to be a great game. But at the end of the day, I like Shaka Smart. I like Ben Gold, their 6'11" center, Cam Jones, and David Joplin to pull off the upset over Michigan State. You could be saying, Lane, you just hate Michigan State because you're a Michigan fan. No, I think this is a horrible matchup for Michigan State. If I'm a Michigan State fan, I'm outraged because they're a great team. They can make the Final Four. That might be a top 4 team in the country. But Marquette matches up so well with them. I think Marquette gets the job done. They move into the Sweet 16 versus Iowa State. Let's move back up to the top of this region for our 2 Sweet 16 games. Auburn versus Michigan, Iowa State versus Marquette. So Auburn versus Michigan. Trey Donaldson from Michigan, transfer from Auburn. Played there for 2 years. Obviously had a great year at Michigan this year. Won in that Big Ten tournament. No debate about it. Got them that layup against Maryland, the buzzer beater, played great against Purdue, and really provided a spark for Michigan that he wasn't playing so great since January. He had a huge slump from, I would say, mid-January up until that Big Ten tournament game against Purdue. Because Trey Donaldson was shooting the lights out in LA when they played USC and UCLA. You didn't see much of that out of Trey Donaldson, except for maybe the Penn State game. But this can be a great game. Daniel Wolf played Auburn in the round of 64 last year, had a great game, wins the impact right there, fouled out in that game, but still made a huge impact to win that game. Janai Broome versus Vlad Golin's going to be a great matchup. But Vlad Golin's 7'1", and Janai Broome's 6'9". That's a mismatch right there. I don't know if you can back down on Vlad Golin. And if you can, Danny Wolf's going to be open. Namari Burnett's going to be open. Auburn, they can shoot the lights out, but it's also going to be tough to do that when Ruben Jales and Namari Burnett, 2 of the best guards in the country, who just held potentially the best shooting guard in the country, John Tonje, to 1 field goal, and it was a dunk in that Big Ten tournament championship game. Auburn's going to lose this game to Michigan. You might be saying it's homer pick. I just gave you the analysis for it. Why Michigan is going to make the Elite Eight, where I think they play Marquette, who beats down on Iowa State. A little Midwest action right here. Marquette, the better team in my opinion. They make a surprise run to the Elite Eight. Now who makes the Final Four out of our first region? Will it be Michigan or will it be Marquette? I'm going to go with the Michigan Wolverines over Marquette, and Michigan gets into their Final Four. First one since 2018. What a win this is going to be for Michigan. Dusty May, what a turnaround he's had. Dusty May, he's the only coach in this region outside of Bruce Pearl and Tom Izzo to make the Final Four. So I think Dusty May set up very nicely in this region, the Michigan Wolverines. Let's go Michigan into the Final Four. We'll switch over to our next region, which is 1 seed Florida's region. They're playing Norfolk State. No debate here. Florida, SEC champions. I'm going to call my shot right here because I'm going to praise myself here. I'm going to brag a little bit. Florida was ranked number 25 preseason, and I had them in my Final Four preseason because I knew what Walter Clayton could do. I knew how good of a coach Todd Golden was, and I knew Will Richard, Elijah Martin, and these guys were going to get these things running this year. That's what they've done, being a 1 seed when nobody expected them to but me. So Florida, they move on to my round 32. Had to brag a little bit right there. We'll see if I still put them in my Final Four. UConn versus Oklahoma. Obviously, UConn's fell on tough times this year. They're the back-to-back national champions. But it's a different squad. Alex Karaban came back. That's about it. Maybe Solo Ball, who's had a pretty good season so far. Hassan Diarra. Those are the 3 core guys in this team. But then you get to some of the new guys. Liam McNeely, averaging around 15 points a game. Aiden Mahaney, who's actually playing a lot more, which I like. Terrence Reed Jr., transfer from Michigan, smaller size center, but still a good player. I think they beat Oklahoma in this game. Oklahoma's led by Jeremiah Fears, brother of Jeremy Fears. Jeremiah Fears showed up to Oklahoma's campus on August, ended up being a great player for them, one of the best point guards in the country. He's going to be a lottery pick in June for the NBA draft. But UConn gets the job done right here. Danny Hurley beats down on another former March Madness hero of a coach in Porter Moser, who led Loyola Chicago to the Sweet 16 in 2021 and the Final Four in 2018. But UConn gets the win right here. UConn versus Florida will be a round 32 matchup, one of the best round 32 matchups we're going to have this year. Memphis versus Colorado State. Memphis, praise them. Great season, Penny Hardaway. Great season. You finally had a great season. But the seeding isn't so great. You're 29-5. You got great wins over Michigan State, over a few other good teams. Over UConn, great Maui tournament for Memphis. But they're kind of disrespected with this seeding. They did what they need to do in the American Conference. I think what turned the committee off a little bit was they didn't blow anybody out in the American Conference. All their games are pretty close, and they still did lose in 3 games in the conference. So it's going to be a great game right here against Colorado State, who really wasn't supposed to be good this year, and they weren't good for a long time. But Niko Medved, head coach Colorado State, has still yet to win an NCAA tournament game. He won a first 4 game against Virginia last year, but lost to Michigan back in 2022 and lost to Texas in 2024. He's looking for revenge right here in 2025. Does he get it? I think he does. They're on a 10-game winning streak. Nikkei Clifford had 25 points in that Mountain West Championship game. He's averaging about 20 points a game. Colorado State, 12/5 upset right here. I think that's the biggest upset we've had so far. Colorado State into my round 32. You might call it all chalk. That's a pretty big upset right there. 12/5. PJ Haggerty, one thing right here. Best player in Memphis, 18 points in that conference championship game, 14 off of free throws. Maryland versus Grand Canyon. I was tempted to pick Grand Canyon in this game. I really was. Bryce Drew is a really good coach. Came from Vanderbilt, won an NCAA tournament game last year against St. Mary's in a 12/5 upset. Thing of note, they were leading Final Four team Alabama in the final 4 minutes of that game. It was 62-61 Grand Canyon. Final score ended up being 71-62 Alabama. So they went scoreless in the last 4 minutes. You don't think Bryce Drew's squad has been thinking about those last 4 minutes of that tournament game that could have gotten them to the Sweet 16 the whole entire year? Oh, they are. It's the same squad. They came back. But 13/4 upset against Maryland, who I think should have been a higher seed. Derek Queen might just be the best player in college basketball. Derek Queen is an incredible player. He's been playing better than Cooper Flagg as of late, been playing better than Walter Clayton as of late, been playing way better than Janai Broom as of late. Derek Queen, a freshman, is going to be a top 10 pick in this NBA draft. Watching him, watching Julian Reese, watching a bunch of guys on this team that know how to shoot the ball. Let's look at Jacoby Gillespie. A bunch of guys in this team. Celton Miguel. They get it done right here. Maryland moves on to my round 32. One of the best games in this round of 64 is Maryland versus Grand Canyon. It's going to be a really high-scoring game. Watch that Maryland versus Michigan game twice, back-to-back weeks. Maryland played great in both games. They just couldn't get the job done the second one, but they get the job done in the round of 64 versus Grand Canyon. A tough thing right here for Bryce Drew and Grand Canyon. Missouri versus Drake. Drake's 30-3. Ben McCollum went from D2 after winning many national championships at the D2 level to taking on this Drake job. And he's done a pretty good job at it. Brought all his D2 players over. He didn't think he could translate to D1. Well, they're 30-3, and they're having a great year. And they haven't really won tournament games because they've been in, a solid program for the past few years. Darian DeVries, who's at West Virginia now, he was their head coach for a while. He did a really solid job of this program, left it nicely to Ben McCollum, who brought in his new players. Missouri, though, Caleb Grill. I'm going to take that squad, led by Caleb Grill, Mark Mitchell, Dennis Gates, their head coach. They move on to round 32. They beat down on Drake. I don't see an 11/6 upset right here, in my opinion. Texas Tech versus UNC Wilmington. Texas Tech is very efficient offensively. UNC Wilmington really isn't on defense. Texas Tech moves on to round 32. Quick one right there. Kansas versus Arkansas, Hall of Fame coaching matchup. Bill Self versus John Calipari in the first round of the tournament. Kansas played Arkansas in a scrimmage this year, preseason, and they lost that game. Kansas has fallen on tough times as of late, but I'm going to pick Kansas in this game to move on to the round of 32. I think the Big 12 Conference is a really tough conference to play in. Now, so is the SEC, but the SEC and Arkansas a little less rhythm, I think, right now than Kansas, so Kansas will put on my round 32. Finish out this first round in that region, St. John's versus Omaha. Omaha shouldn't be in this field. They got really lucky in their conference tournament. St. John's, Rick Pitino, 30-4 in the year. Whew! What a great job they've done. St. John's moves on from round 32. They still have some bad losses in there to Baylor, which is, neutral site. At the time, Baylor is a pretty good team. Georgia, they also lost to Villanova, but outside of that, they played great in Big East play. So St. John's a 2 seed. They move on to round 32. Speed things up here. Florida versus UConn. Told you, I like this game. I like Walter Clayton Jr. a lot. That step back is lethal, so I'll put Florida into my Sweet 16. Another easy one right here. Maryland versus Colorado State. Nikkei Clifford, love the story. But Derek Queen and this team is going to shut you down. They have great shooting, Maryland. One thing about Maryland, they don't have a deep bench, but neither does Colorado State. Maryland into round 32. Missouri versus Texas Tech. It's going to be a great battle. But the thing at the end of the day is, Texas Tech guards, they're pretty young. Christian Anderson is one of the youngest players in college basketball, and he's still bringing up the ball every play for Texas Tech. JT Toppin's had a great year. They beat teams like Houston on the road, but they're not going to get a neutral site win right here over Missouri. Missouri shoots the ball better than anybody in this field. Saying it right there. Missouri's the best three-point shooting team in this field. Tony Perkins, who had a great year a few years ago at Iowa, he's on this team. Dennis Gates done a great job, like I said. Caleb Grill coming over from Iowa State. Mark Mitchell coming over from Duke. Missouri into the round of 32. Kansas versus St. John's. I'm going with an upset, another 7/2 upset. I think Hunter Dickinson, he's just going to play great in this game. I used to love Hunter Dickinson. Then I used to hate him. I need to love him this week for him to get this win over St. John's. You watch that St. John's Creighton game. They struggled heavily against Ryan Kalkbrenner. The only reason they really adjusted was because they only guarded Kalkbrenner, and then nobody else could do anything on Creighton. Problem is, with Kansas, they got Hunter Dickinson, they got Flory Badunga, they got Zeke Mayo, and they got DeJuan Harris. It's a very talented squad. They've beaten teams like Duke this year. They've beaten teams like Michigan State. It's still a really good team that fell on tough times in Big 12 play, but I got them into my Sweet 16. St. John's, RJ Lewis is a good point guard. Kadari Richmond's a good shooting guard, but at the end of the day, defense doesn't get you everywhere in college basketball. It can win you most games, but you gotta have some offense in there too. Defense can't win you everything. So I'm going to go with Kansas over St. John's. Sorry, Rick Pitino, you don't get done this year. Maybe next year you can get some good shooters. Florida versus Maryland in this Sweet 16 game. It's going to be a great game. Derek Queen, he's going to be a difference maker in this one. But the difference in this game is Florida's bench is better than Maryland's. That's what's going to show up right here. Maryland's going to be tired. They've been playing a bunch of games in the past few days, and that's going to show up right here when their starters get a little bit fatigued early. Florida into the Elite Eight. Missouri versus Kansas. Matchup earlier in the season. Missouri handled them at home. Granted, I was at home. This is neutral site. Probably be a fair amount of fans there from Missouri at this game. So let's pencil in Missouri into the Elite Eight. And Missouri versus Florida, an SEC Elite Eight battle. Missouri beat them this year, and that was a great game. But Florida, Walter Clayton Jr., Todd Golden, the hottest team in the country, they get into my Final Four, and they'll play Michigan in that Final Four, which we'll pick at the end of when we get done with all these regions in that Final Four matchup. Come back in a second to pick these next two regions to find who's going to go to the Final Four. You know what I love about March in the NCAA tournament? There's games every day and all day. It's awesome to see your team play every day. There's back-to-backs in college basketball. There's triples, back-to-back-to-back. There's even back-to-back-to-back-to-backs in the conference tournaments. It's awesome to see. And then you get 16 games a day, around 64. Then you get 8 the next day, 8 the day after that. It's just awesome for college basketball. So it's definitely the best time of the year for sports. You can say that for a lot of things, but March Madness is a special time in sports. Let's pick things back up right here, though. Duke, a 1 seed, the number 2 team in the country. I don't know how they're not the number 1 overall seed. It's a bit disgraceful, in my opinion, that they're not the number 1 overall seed. They're 31-3. Auburn's 28-5. They won their conference championship. Auburn didn't. They beat Auburn. Auburn can beat Duke. It's clear as day to me that Duke should have been number 1 overall seed. I don't know how Auburn's a 1 seed even. I think if Michigan State would have won the Big Ten, I would have said Auburn shouldn't have been a 1 seed. I could say right now, St. John's should be a 1 seed, even though they don't have them to go to the Final Four. I think resume-wise, they're better than Auburn. Auburn may have so many top 25 wins, they shouldn't be the number 1 overall seed. That's why I have them losing the Sweet 16. I go on tangents sometimes. But Duke, number 2, 1 overall seed. They're going to play, let's go, who did I pick in this game? American. They're going to play out of the first 4. Yeah, no 16-1 upset. Cooper Flagg should not play in this game, in my opinion. Should be on a very short leash in these first 2 rounds. He's injured, shouldn't play in this game. It's very easy. Duke's a great squad. They're not going to lose to American in this first game. Mississippi State versus Baylor. I'm picking Baylor solely based off of I want that Jeremy Roach versus Duke matchup. Roach played for Duke for 4 years. He's been a great player for Duke in his career, but he's going to have to go up against Duke in the round of 32. Baylor, we'll circle them in right here. Baylor will play Duke in the round of 32. Oregon versus Liberty. I'm a big believer in Oregon. I like Nate Biddle, and I love Jackson Shellstad, but they've also fallen on hard times as of late. They probably kicked Indiana outside the NCAA tournament, which was a great win for them. But then they lost to Michigan State. They didn't really do anything in that game to show any promise of making a deep run in this tournament. Watch Liberty in their conference tournament. Watch their game against UTEP. UTEP was shooting the lights out in the second half. Problem was, I think they made their first 12 shots. Liberty had made 12 of their first 12 shots in that second half. Liberty was on fire, and they're going to continue to be on fire. A 12-5 upset. You know, you might say my first round's all chalk. I'm getting some upsets in there. Liberty, 12-5 versus Oregon. Arizona versus Akron. Arizona's 12 losses, but Big 12's hard to play in. Caleb Love, KJ Lewis, Jaden Bradley, they get the win over Akron. No upset over here. Arizona, it's the round 32. They'll play Liberty. BYU versus VCU. BYU doesn't have a strong front court. VCU has 2 players, 6'10". They're a great team. They play great defense. BYU, they shoot the lights out. VCU, they don't let you shoot the ball. With that being said, I'm still going to pick BYU. I think Richie Saunders and Yor Durman, they slow this game down a little bit more. They're still a better team. BYU over VCU. No 11-6 upset right here. Wisconsin versus Montana. Wisconsin, they played a bunch of games in the last few days. They've been shooting super inconsistently. John Tonje, one of the best players in the country, had a horrible game against Michigan. I mean, prime for an upset right here in the first round. Luckily for them, Montana's the luckiest team to be in this tournament. The luckiest team in college basketball, according to Ken Palm. It's going to be a blowout right here. Luckily for Wisconsin, Montana, Don't like to say the word sucks a lot on the show, but Montana sucks. Wisconsin, move on to round 32. If you're a Montana fan, you win this game. Clip me. Do what you want. But you're not going to win. Wisconsin's the round 32. St. Mary's versus Vanderbilt. 28-5 St. Mary's. They got upset in the first round last year when they were a 5 seed. They lost the West Coast Conference Championship game. They're upset about that. They're still a really good team, though. They have the West Coast Conference Player of the Year, Randy Bent's squad. They rebound really nicely, control the rebound margin. They don't turn the ball over much. They're very efficient on offense. Vanderbilt lost their SEC first round, other tournament game to Texas. I don't like Vanderbilt in this game right here. I think they're still an up-and-coming program. They were a really bad program for years. Credit to Bryce Drew, Grand Canyon coach for that. Credit to Jerry Stackhouse, who isn't their coach anymore. They brought in the James Madison head coach from last year. He's done a great job this year bringing them to the tournament. He's not going to take them any further. St. Mary's, it's round 32. Alabama versus Robert Morris, 2 versus 15. I mean, we're not going to pick any 2 versus 15 upset right here. Bama moves on to the round 32. Interesting storyline for Alabama. They're a great team. They were tied with Florida at halftime in the SEC tournament semifinal. Grant Nelson doesn't play in the second half. They lose by 22. So I'm going to say right there, you don't have Grant Nelson. I don't know how this tournament's going to go for you. Duke versus Baylor. Like I said, the Jeremy Roach show right here. I think he plays great in this game, Jeremy Roach. I think he has a chip on his shoulder. Even though he had a great time at Duke, he still wants to beat the brakes off of his former team. This game's in rally, though. Duke's not going to lose this game. I guarantee you, most of the Duke students, faculty, whatever you want to call it, is going to be there. The home crowd's there for Duke. They're rooting for them in North Carolina. Duke over Baylor. Liberty versus Arizona. Like Arizona, like I said, also like Liberty. But I think Arizona, KJ Lewis is the difference right here. Guy who gets, I think maybe could get a quintuple double one day in college basketball. He averages around 12 points, almost 10 rebounds, around 5 assists, gets around, whatever you want to say, 2 steals a game. Sometimes can get 3 blocks a game. He's a great player, KJ Lewis for Arizona. Not Caleb Love the difference. KJ Lewis for Arizona. He's the difference right here. Arizona into the Sweet 16. BYU versus Wisconsin. BYU, like I said, they can shoot the lights out. Watch that Michigan versus Wisconsin game. Michigan was shooting a lot of shots, and they weren't hitting them, but they got a bunch of open looks. Wisconsin did too. Wisconsin missed theirs. I think BYU gets a bunch of open looks in this game. They get the job done. Igor Durman could also be a lottery pick coming up in June. So Kevin Young, coming over from the Suns as an assistant coach last year, heading over to BYU into Provo, Utah, brings them into the Sweet 16, his first year as a college basketball head coach. Next one, St. Mary's versus Alabama. It's going to be a great game. St. Mary's has great guard play, like I said, but also Grant Nelson. If he can come back, he's going to be a big difference maker. I don't think they need Grant Nelson in this game, though. And Clifford and Morier, a few other guys in this big man in this team, they get the job done. Mohamed Diabate, he gets a great game in this one. Alabama and Mark Sears move on to the Sweet 16 for the second straight season. Duke versus Arizona. Duke played Arizona earlier this year in McHale Center. If you don't know what that is, that's Arizona's home court. Duke beat them by 14. They held them to 55 points. I see something similar to that this year. Duke over Arizona. Move on to the Elite Eight for the second straight season. Duke into the Elite Eight. BYU versus Alabama. BYU, like I said, they can shoot the ball really efficiently, but I don't think they do that right here. Like Alabama, Chris Youngblood could be a difference right here. A good defensive point guard. Aiden Holloway, Mark Sears, they mix things up a little bit. Mark Sears needs to play well. It's when the lights are the brightest, and that's exactly what he does. He plays great in these big-time games. Alabama over BYU. They're into my Elite Eight versus Duke. Does Duke make the Final Four? Duke was very close to it last year in their Elite Eight game, where a lot of people thought they should beat North Carolina State, including me. I think they do win this game right here. So Duke into my Final Four. They're my third team into the Final Four. And we got one region left to fill out our Final Four, everybody. In this region, it's led by the Houston Cougars. Something interesting about Houston. It's the same squad as the past few years, except that they're all seniors now, and they don't have Jamal Shedd and Marcus Sasser, but LJ Cryer has filled in a great role as their point guard, starting point guard, one of the best scoring and assisting and rebounding point guards in the country. Houston, they're going to be a tough out. They move on to round 32. They're playing SIU Edwardsville. Don't know what the SIU stands for. Don't really care. Houston into the round 32. Gonzaga versus Georgia. Asa Newell from Montverde. He could be a lottery pick. I know I said that about a lot of guys this year, but Georgia center, Asa Newell's a great player. Won't be enough for them in this game, though. I'm going to go with the Zags, a top 10 KenPom team, into the round 32. It's going to be a great matchup. The Zags versus the Houston Cougars. Clemson versus McNeese. Everybody loves McNeese. Or Khan, their manager, Amir Khan, who's taken the world by storm recently. Everybody thinks because they're this high, flashy team with an awesome manager. Well, it is awesome. Amir Khan got the first NIL deal ever from a team manager, Amir Khan. Will Wade, former LSU head coach, brought LSU to the NCAA tournament. How many times? A bunch of times. How many times did he coach them? Not too many because of NCAA investigations actually happened twice where he couldn't coach the NCAA tournament, 2019 and 2022. But little interesting thing about Will Wade, he's holding out for a big job, maybe Indiana, maybe North Carolina State. They're a good team, McNeese. They're 30-3. They've had a great season, but they're playing plumbers in this conference that they're in. Clemson has had a great season. They've beaten Duke, Chase Hunter, 27-6. Actually, the same record as McNeese. I stand corrected. 27-6, McNeese. So McNeese lost by 8 to Alabama earlier this year. It's a good game for them, but they play plumbers, like I said. And Clemson is great in that ACC. Thought they should have beaten Louisville in that ACC semifinal. They didn't get it done, though. But Clemson moves on to the round of 32 over McNeese. Purdue versus High Point. Everybody hates Purdue, and everybody loves High Point. What's a High Point? Where is High Point? I can't pick a school named High Point. I mean, you can clip me. You can say whatever you want. I don't care. Purdue reaches their high point right here. They get over to the round of 32. No debate about it for me right there. Yeah, sorry, High Point. I don't even care about you right now. Illinois, while going up against Texas in this game. Illinois is a great roster on paper. Will Riley, Kasparis, Jakunidis, while also European, could be a top 5 pick in this year's NBA draft. You want to know about that? Talking a lot about the NBA draft, I guess, in this episode with these players. And they also have good center, Tomislav Ivicic, brother of Arkansas center, Zvonimir Ivicic. They're a good team, and they've had a great non-conference schedule. When they got to the Big Ten, things started to crumple for them. They haven't played great. They've had a lot of injuries. They're getting healthier, but I don't think that's enough right here. I think Rodney Terry, he's fighting for his job, and he wants to win this. Trey Johnson, one of the best players in the country, going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft this upcoming summer. I'm going to go Texas into that round 32. It's a risk taking a first 4 team to win around a 64 game, but they do it right here. Texas over Illinois. Kentucky versus Troy. Interesting thing about Kentucky. They're a 3 seed, and they have 11 losses. 11 losses. Good wins, though. They beat Duke. They beat Tennessee twice. They beat Florida. That's when they were healthy. I don't think Lamont Butler is going to play in the first round. I don't think Kirk Krisha is going to play again this season. Kobe Brea, he's been up and down a little bit this season with the shooting. They're injured. They're banged up so much to a point where I think if the season started today, Kentucky wouldn't make the NCAA tournament. And for that reason, I'm taking Troy to pull off the upset. It's not so much about what I love about Troy, it's about why I don't love Kentucky, why they're primed for an upset. They got upset last year in a 14-3 game. They're going to get upset again this year in a 14-3 game. Troy, it's more around 32. UCLA versus Utah State. Everybody loves Utah State. Their 3rd straight year in the NCAA tournament. They choked last year against Dayton. It's their 3rd straight head coach, Danny Sprinkle, head coach of Washington now. He was with them 2 years ago. Another guy before that. They're a good team, and they have a great season in the Mountain West. But UCLA is just too good of a squad. They had a great run in the Big Ten. I think UCLA struggled a little bit with their added conference, except for that Gonzaga game. Then they struggled a little bit in the Big Ten play. Finished up great in the Big Ten. So UCLA, it's around 32. They got a top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. UCLA, it's around 32. Tennessee versus Wofford. I've actually seen this upset thrown out there, but Tennessee is a great team, and Wofford lost by about 50 at Duke, so no upset right here. Tennessee into the round 32. Let's move up to the top of this round 32 in this region right here. Houston versus Gonzaga. The best round 32 game. Better than Duke Baylor, better than Auburn Creighton, better than Florida UConn in this 1 versus 8 matchup right here. So I'm going to go with Houston in this game. I think Gonzaga is still a really good squad. Mark Few is one of the best coaches in the world, a part of the Team USA coaching staff. But Kelvin Sampson, he's out for revenge. He wants to win a championship with this team. Juwan Roberts knows it's his last run. Ojai Cryer knows it's his last run. Mercy Miller, he's got a lot of time with his team. But Milos Uzan, he knows it's his last run. Emmanuel Sharp, these guys are hungry for a championship, and they continue that road right here into the Sweet 16. Clemson versus Purdue. It's going to be a great game. I think at the end of the day, I'm taking the Big Ten Player of the Year, Braden Smith, who I at one point called the best player in college basketball. He's not the best player in college basketball anymore, but at one point, in my opinion, he was. Trey Kaufman-Wren is also a great power forward. He shuts down the chef of Clemson, Ian Shefflin, in this game. Purdue into the Sweet 16, where they'll play Houston. Texas versus Troy. I think Texas, Ronnie Terry, what saves his job is making it to the Sweet 16. So Texas gets a huge win over Troy. It's an easier game than their first game. Everybody knows that right here. Troy, no Cinderella run right here. They lose in the round 32. Texas into the Sweet 16. UCLA versus Tennessee. It's going to be a good game, back and forth, but I like Chaz Lanier, Igor Milicic, Felix Okpara, and Rick Barnes to beat down UCLA and move into the Sweet 16, where they'll play Texas. A good matchup that we just saw last week in the SEC tournament. Houston versus Purdue. Purdue, big men kind of lacking in there. I think Juwan Roberts is the most ferocious player in the country when healthy, which hopefully he will be for this tournament. Javier Francis is also a menace on the court. This team is physically imposing. You're not going to win a jump ball against this team. You're not going to win a loose ball against this team because they are that physical. It might seem like they're trying to be too physical sometimes. They get a lot of fouls, but they're also going to out-rebound you so much. They're going to get to the free throw line. They're going to be consistent. I love this Houston team. They're more consistent than any other Houston team I've seen in the past few years. Even the ones with Shed, even the ones with Marcus Sasser, even the ones with Quentin Grimes. I like this Houston team a lot, and they move into my Elite Eight. Houston over Purdue. Texas versus Tennessee. Like I said, we saw this matchup last week. I love Texas in this game. I just can't do it. Caden Shredrick, he's not going to play great in this game. He didn't play so great in that SEC tournament game. Trey Johnson, unfortunately, his college career comes to an end right here. And Tennessee moves into the Elite Eight. Houston versus Tennessee. It's going to be an awesome game. A 1 versus 2 matchup. And we had another 1 versus 2 matchup in the Duke versus Alabama game. We get one right here in Houston versus Tennessee. Houston has had some rough losses this year. They had a really rough patch where they were ranked 15 in the country by about week 6 of the college basketball season. But at this point, Houston is the number 2 team in the country. They ran the table in the Big 12. They haven't lost a game since February 1st, and it was by 1 point. Texas Tech in overtime. I think 3 of their losses have come in overtime. Houston is the premier team to watch right now in college basketball, and I think they get the job done against Tennessee. Houston moves into my Final Four, and that rounds out our Final Four right now. We got Michigan versus Florida, Duke versus Houston. Be back in a second to pick our Final Four and crown a national champion in this perfect Schoolyard Sports bracket on episode 206. Stay tuned. Now, the Final Four is here of this perfect Schoolyard Sports episode 206 bracket. The Michigan Wolverines, who have had a great run in the past few weeks, winning that Big Ten tournament, having a great ride into this season. Florida, who's been an unexpected premier team in college basketball this year, led by Walter Clayton Jr. in their huge duo of big men, Alex Condon and Thomas Haw, who's been great for them, and Todd Golden, a young head coach. The Duke Blue Devils, led by freshman Cooper Flagg, Kamal Malawak, Concanopel, also mixed in there with veteran point guard Tyrese Proctor, Sion James, a great bench for this Duke team. They're going to be a tough out in this Final Four. Houston, which is a very experienced squad. Juwan Roberts, Javier Francis, LJ Cryer, Milos Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp, the sharpshooter for this team, and the best head coach right now in this Final Four, in my opinion, off experience, Kelvin Sampson, which is going to be a great Final Four. That Duke-Houston game, you just have to wait to see my pick, because the first one we're picking is Michigan versus Florida. You know me. I'm a huge Michigan fan. And I think it's right that Michigan is in the Final Four. They've had a great ride this season, and Michigan always does great in the NCAA tournament. You look at 2017, they made Sweet 16. 2018, they made the Final Four, national championship game. 2019, they made the Sweet 16. 2021, they made the Sweet 16. This is their first appearance since 2021, but unfortunately, that ride comes to an end right here. Walter Clayton Jr. is such a great player. He's an awesome player to watch, but they also have a great bench. They also have Elijah Martin, who's a great guard for Florida. Will Richard. They have so many people to complement this squad, and they're the best shooting team in the Final Four. So Florida over Michigan, they're into my national championship game. Duke versus Houston. I've wrestled with this one. I really have. Because Duke is such a great team. But so is Houston. Because Duke is the freshman, but Houston has the experienced big men. I'll say this right here. I went to Duke Houston in the Sweet 16 last year. Duke had no business to win that game, except that they did. Nobody expected it. I didn't even expect it. You could say it's because Jamal Shed went out. I don't think so. Because this is the same team without Jamal Shed as they were last year. It's the same exact team. Milos Uzan, Emmanuel Sharp. Maybe the only difference is you have Mercy Miller in there now. But Juwan Roberts is on that team. Javier Francis was on that team. Only difference this game is going to be Duke's better. Cooper Flagg's better than the best player in last year's Duke team. Let's say Kyle Filipowski. Sion James is a better player than Jeremy Roach this season. Concanopel can shoot the lights out. Isaiah Evans off the bench can shoot the lights out. Pat Gongba has been a huge spark for Duke. One thing of note for Duke right here, Malik Brown, who's a huge force in these big ones they've had against teams like Auburn, other teams in there. He's going to be out for the NCAA tournament. Something to watch right here. But I think Duke makes it over to the national championship game where they'll play Florida. Can't wait for that game. And that's going to be a national championship game. Come back in a second to see my national championship pick. It's that time. It's the national championship game. I don't even know where my Sharpie went. I don't need my Sharpie to pick this game because you know how we do it. I flick up the massive photo of my national champion. Did it with Illinois in 2021. Probably did it upside down. Did it in 2022 with Kansas, and they won. The Jayhawks, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, who has a great team. 2023, Texas didn't get it done, and then last year, Kentucky. I need to get it done this year. I need to. These teams, I had them in my Final Four preseason. I'm not going off what I've seen this year. I'm going off of what I thought in November about these two teams. For Duke, They have great guys. They have Kamal Malawak. They obviously have an awesome head coach in John Shire. And they have a great bench, like I talked about with Pat Gongba, Isaiah Evans. It's more than just Cooper Flagg, who might be a little bit unhealthy. It's more than just Concanupple. It's more than just Tyrese Proctor, Sion James. It's everybody on this Duke basketball team. Even throw a bench guy in there who hasn't played much in his Duke basketball career, but is a spark of this team in the late games. Spencer Hubbard when he gets in at the end of the games. This Duke team is special. They have a great bond. But for Florida, they're a great roster. Maybe the best roster constructed in college basketball. You got Elijah Martin coming over from FAU. Walter Clayton Jr. coming over from Rick Pitino at Iona. And Todd Golden to piece it all together. Will Richard, Alex Condon. They were without Micah Handgolden for most of the season, and they've still had a great season without him. And they've stepped up, everybody on this team, with a great bench. But at the end of the day, it's for all the marbles. Is it going to be the veteran squad, or is it going to be the freshmen of Duke mixed in with the veterans who wins this national championship? My national championship pick is the Duke Blue Devils win this national championship. Throw it up there. For the audio listeners, I apologize. You just missed me taking off my sweatshirt, throwing up the Duke shirt in there, and throwing up the massive Duke basketball poster because I picked it preseason, and I got to ride it. Duke basketball wins the national championship. Thank you for tuning in to this awesome bracket episode. The question of the day to you is, who's going to win March Madness? That's it to close out episode 206, my favorite episode of the year. Thank you for tuning in.